у нас є модераторка, вона скаже.
Пані Леся, пані Леся, потім я її хвалю, а потім Тарас Дмитрович нас хвалить обох.
Але я почну з вас, Роstyslav.
Ну, просто може пані Леся презентувала краще, щоб всі зрозуміли. А я потім прокоментую, наскільки це важливо.
Да?
4 грудня продовжує роботу медіа-центру.
It's December 4, Ukrainian Media Center Ukrinform continues its operation. My name is Svetlana Shiporenko, and now we will be talking about the beginning of the National Reading Week, which starts basically today. It will last until the 11th of December, and we will be talking about the meaning of this week for Ukrainians, what will be the events unfolding during this week, and how this week is going to be special. Let me introduce our guest today. It's Rostyslav Karandieiev, Acting First Deputy Minister of Culture and Information Policy, Oleksandra Koval, Director of the Ukrainian Book Institute, and Taras Kremin, Commissioner for the Protection of State Language. So, Mr. Oleksandr, please tell us what will be so special about this year's event. And I know this year it was decided to devote the events to Mykola Khvylovy, and there is yet an interesting slogan, to be our authentic selves. So why this slogan? Good afternoon to all those who gathered in Ukrinform. Thank you for this opportunity. I want to thank everybody who's watching us online. And before we tell you about the reading week, I would like to quote very important words that were written by Olena Zelenska in her Facebook. Third year in a row, Olena Zelenska supports the National Reading Week, and in her public and civil activities and in her life, she always emphasizes the importance of reading, and she has a lot of projects related to the books and reading. So she writes, in foreign presentations of Ukrainian book shelves, and we opened 183 of them in more than 40 libraries across the world, and Ukrainian Institute of the book also is somehow related to such opening. And I always urge to read about Ukraine not from the news but from the more profound roots, from the books, because when we read on a more profound level we understand better not only the content but ourselves. And I urge Ukrainians now to do it, because upon the initiative of Ukrainian Book Institute, the National Reading Week starts on the 4th of December, and then she says what she reads herself. American historian and researcher of Ukraine, Timothy Snyder, if we want to understand evil and good better, we have to reanimate the history. That's a quotation from Snyder, quotation from his book Way to in Liberty, Russia, Ukraine, World. So basically, what can we add here? Because the First Lady has already mentioned the most important things. So talking about the National Reading Week, similar events that are supposed to focus on importance of reading, importance of books, they happen in many countries, because thanks to reading of books we become the better versions of ourselves. And as Miss Olena says, we understand the world better. The books, they have psychotherapeutical effect, they allow preserving mental health, and it's the first necessity for all of us today. Today there is a huge interest, increasingly growing interest among Ukrainians to themselves, their literature, their history, their books, their culture, and we see it by the books being sold in the bookstores, what people ask for, what are the literature and book podcasts, and there is a broad range of them now. So what are the podcasts that Ukrainians listen to? What are the questions they're asking? And we see that the Ukrainians are now mostly interested in the history of Ukraine and reflection of the history in the books. We've made a study of reading habits. It ended in October this year, and here in Ukrainian Forum we were making a presentation of it, and the study identified that within the last 2 years the number of daily readers has grown from 8 to 18%. We don't understand what created this momentum of this growth, but it's something that we have to continue supporting. It means that the publishers are supposed to increase the quality and quantity of their offers in the market, and the government is supposed to support them in this endeavor to help the bookstores to disseminate the books and to create comfortable conditions for their work. It means that the state is supposed to maintain the demand for books, providing financial aid to the citizens to acquire such books. It will all allow the Ukrainian publishers to make their way out of the crisis situation, to get on the path of rebirth. Well, and talking about the slogan, to be your authentic selves, I think it has a lot of sense. What does it mean to be our authentic selves? It means don't divide Ukraine into West and East, North and South. It means to know your classics well, to make sure that the classics are just as popular as other modern authors. It means learning from classics. It means understanding all their messages that they were trying to communicate, specifically Mykola Khvylovy, because his jubilee coincides with the National Reading Week, more or less. This is why we decided to appeal to his personality, specifically to the slogan that is ascribed to him, away from Moscow. In reality, he didn't state it like that, but the context of other his statements allowed interpreting and narrowing his statements, and he was talking that we shouldn't be educated and get too much fond of Russian literature. And in the same way, he was thinking that we should know, and we're supposed to be educated based on the European literature to understand it, but to create our own literature which is unlike any other. And I would like to add it from myself that only with such literature, and not following any other important examples, we will grow interesting to become interesting to the others, to the world. And what I'm urging, read books not only during Ukrainian readers reading week, but read every day, at least 20-30 minutes per day, and you're gonna be surprised what will be the number of books you cover within a year. maintaining this rhythm, and you don't even imagine how much joy and pleasure you will get out of it. So I call everybody to get involved. Go to the libraries, go to the bookstores, and present books, buy books, and get pleasure from reading. Thank you very much, Ms. Oleksandra. Mr. Rostyslav, in your opinion, why is it important to develop the culture of reading, and what does the state do on their part? Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Thank you for the invitation. There is always something to say about books and reading. It seems trivial, but you know, it's not for the first time. The Ukrainian Reading Week, we focus attention on some related things, on publishing, on authors' rights, the dissemination of books, the copyright protection, cleanliness of Ukrainian language. Well, we understand it all for an umpteenth time, but again, why do we all gather? Well, we could just announce the week, it falls within the calendar, we start the events, and we're wrapping up within a week. But today we don't only announce this reading week from this platform of Ukrinform and Ukrainian Media Center, but we appeal to you with the request to continue bringing up this matter, just like education. There are things that you cannot mention just once or once per month. We have to continue talking about important things all the time. Something that we want to make happen. When we were talking about the necessity of publishing Ukrainian books, it was active in all levels, in the level of the government, of the civil society. There were tectonic moves. The legislation was adopted to protect Ukrainian publishers, to support Ukrainian publishers, to protect Ukrainian literature space. With the beginning of independence, we started talking about protection of Ukrainian language. Those processes started, and the presence of the top level official in the area of protecting the language is a testimony of the fact that we achieved the desired result. But there is no limit to perfection, and Mr. Taras may mention it probably. If we talk about reading, it's the process of education. On a daily basis, we're supposed to tell ourselves to set this task in front of us and to fulfill it. Read a book for ourselves, read a book for our kids, and make sure that the kids read the books by themselves. And at the same time, we have, during our life, we have very limited time, specifically those who are involved in civil activities or who are burdened with other responsibilities. Well, all those people have little time to read. But in this case, we have to force ourselves. We have to keep talking it to ourselves. We have to say it to ourselves. We have to say it to each other. It's like, you know, when you learn a foreign language, for example, well, learning is difficult in general. Sometimes it seems impossible to find time when you have a working rhythm that doesn't allow you to do so, but you have to do it. Secondly, you have to be attentive, and you have to understand that reading is one of the most efficient tools for development of the personality of a human, of the thinking process, the forms of organization, of internal organization that allows creating a full-fledged personality, operative in taking decisions with clarity and understanding. So it's important to make sure that children fulfill the right deeds from the early childhood, to make sure they love the books. Even when they cannot read, they can hold the books, they can watch them, watch the pictures, and then it becomes a habit that accompanies us our whole lives. So look, those who start reading from the early childhood, they continue reading as they grow older. Those who were not reading in the early childhood, it's very difficult for them to force themselves to take the book, to read it, and especially, let alone doing it on a daily basis. So not only us, but you, our dear colleagues, also understand it. You support this idea. So please, not only today, but every day, please try to find opportunity in your news reports, in preparation of this or those materials which are adjacent to this topic. Please remind everybody of the importance of reading. Well, then let's proceed to the functions of the government. Well, it takes time. And secondly, you have to have a book in your hands, not only time. Today we observe quite good dynamics on publishing markets, even regardless of all of the challenges of today. The work of authors is very intense in terms of writing and translating. And the publishers themselves, the bookstores, are filled with books. They work, and a lot of people come there who want to use their services. Today we are on the threshold of the announcement of the state program to support the Ukrainian language that contemplates an important component, a popularization of Ukrainian language and development of its use, development of its application in real life, and obviously not only for the direct verbal communication, but also through the written product, through the book, through other written sources. Also, we are saying that we are implementing the standards of the law adopted by the Parliament of Ukraine to support the publisher's business. The budget for the next year contemplates those expenses that are very important, and they will be used to implement the measures to support every specific person, a citizen of Ukraine, who achieved an age of 18 years, to make sure that they can buy books. The state has an experience. You remember during COVID times, through DIA application, through relevant electronic certificates, we were supporting the citizens, and through them we supported the publisher's business. As they say, the system was capitalized, and all those funds were channeled to the adjacent businesses. They reinforced them institutionally, and we were observing significant process, and we've made sure that COVID did not weaken the publisher's business and reading in Ukraine, but there was a huge leap that Ms. Lesa mentioned, and there was specific research dedicated to it that was presented in this studio. So we think such government support will be of use for all of the participants of this book reading process. Also, we have a decision taken by the Cabinet of Ministers. We contemplate the possibility to support the bookstores which use the premises for their business under conditions of rent. Well, we can say that there are priorities, but the laws are supposed to be fulfilled. If the law says that the government supports the booksellers, supporting them by compensating their rent payment, we have to do it. The relevant decisions are taken by the parliament, and as a regulation there is a resolution developed. Like, yes, there are certain speculations, but it may be not quite timely. It should have be implemented after the end of the martial law. Yes, such speculations may exist, but there is yet another thought. that today is the rightest time to support those who complement to the formulation of the morale, of the resilience, as Ms. Lessa mentioned, quoting the First Lady, formulating our mental health through reading of the book as one of the most efficient tools. Well, it's pity to say that unfortunately the state budget for the next year doesn't contemplate any expenses, any capital expenses for procurement of books to replenish the reserves of the libraries, but we try to find ways. First, there are local budgets which are not prohibited, and we want to thank our colleagues. Well, basically the public libraries, they are managed by the local governments. This is why, first of all, it seems like they should be allocating funds to replenish the library reserves. They have those funds allocated. We are in touch with the regional authorities, and we keep asking them at a minimum to contemplate such expenses in their budgets. Also, we are humbled by the fact that our foreign partners don't only help us by their books issued or published in foreign languages, but also they help us in publishing Ukrainian books abroad in Ukrainian language and even here in Ukraine, again to replenish our libraries, to disseminate the books among those audiences for whom it's actual and important. First of all, for the children. Also, what's important to mention, and it's important too, that we're not just standing and doing nothing. Today we've created a powerful lobbying group of people who intensify the work to protect Ukrainian books. There is the Institute of the Commissioner to protect Ukrainian books, and through some transformations we may reinforce the Institute of the Book. We state that there is certain diversion of attention of the government, there are many people involved in the publishing business and who are adjacent to these businesses, is like not only Ministry of Culture and Information Policy, but many other scientific institutions like the Chamber of Book, many dedicated libraries in different areas, and we have plans to arrange this system. Everything that lives today that uses the government support should be systematized, and is desirable to make it through leading Ukrainian book organization, which is the Ukrainian Book Institute. This is what we want, and we have such place to reinforce institutionally the Institute of Book as the government institution that will be concerned and who will implement many projects that are being implemented not only now, but also those that Ms. Lessa has presented. So there will be a week. It will be saturated with different events. But even beyond this week, we will continue doing our job. We will promote reading, and we will make sure that the books end up in the people's hands and stay there the longest possible. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Rostyslav. Mr. Taras, we're seeing that Ukrainians started reading more. There are more publishers emerging in the market. There are more bookstores. There are wonderful illustrators, translators, authors. What should we do to make sure this process not only stops but gains momentum and develops, and what will be the role of the government and the businesses in this work? Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here, because for me reading, just like for all of us, is the process of self-research, self-preparation, self-improvement, and it's a search of answers to the eternal questions. How can we grow stronger in this fight against our old enemy? I think Mykola Khvylovy, as the participant of literature discussions of the years 25-28, came very close to this answer, and the answer was walk the path of Ukrainization, not enlightenment. We have to have efficient government policy and not to ask people to speak in Ukrainian. So when we talk about the importance of reading, we talk about our defense capabilities, about identity, about economy, our strength. Why am I saying about economy? Look, recently the parliament voted for the law that prohibited the import of books from Russia and Belarus, which says that today we have additional capabilities to reinforce our book market and to forward the funds that we got from this industry we can forward them to the state budget of Ukraine. We have to really reinforce our budget resilience, our independence, to make sure that we efficiently use the collected funds to reinforce our armed forces. Another important component is that we are really the nation that reads a lot, used to read a lot, but to read and to cover more people with reading, it's the question of capacity, accessibility, and the balance in the book market. When I'm talking about accessibility, I'm talking about the possibility to cover all the citizens of Ukraine in every part of Ukraine. I'm talking about printed books, audio books, I'm talking about the electronic books in the transport, and I like the position of our national transporter, railway transporter, or Ukrzaliznytsia, with their electronic books on board, but we have to make the book accessible to the vulnerable categories of population, people with special needs. This is why the books that are printed with Braille script are undersupplied in our way. We have a lot of people who are in need of such books. They are really necessary in the market because we are a European country, we are a European community, so we should talk about European values no matter the origin or condition of any single person. And the third component is the reinforcement of the armed forces of Ukraine. There is a reason that this week, just like every other week, Ukrainians continue helping our armed forces in all areas, including the replenishment of the libraries. I remember back in year 2014, my friend Gennady Molchanov from Mykola, a famous writer, has taken Shevchenko's Kobzar, published in 30s years, on him. It was censored, but he kept it with himself. Well, you remember many cases when Bible near the heart were saving our servicemen in the battlefield, saving them against heavy wounds, and it's just yet another case when knowledge and wisdom can make us safe in times of heavy or difficult challenges, and we can hand over the books to those communities that are currently deprived of their libraries, or their libraries were relocated to other safer regions. I remember about the library named after Oleksandra in Kherson that was catastrophically ruined just recently. I remember about the workers, librarians, the employees of the libraries, because they are the first communicators in between our personal world and the world of knowledge. And now those children's libraries, they require the support from the communities. The communities have such financial capabilities, and let them do all the necessary work that they continue doing. And another important thing is the Ukrainian book throughout the world. So it's not only about the opportunity to improve our language, it's not only about the protection of Ukrainian book in our libraries, where we have to have at least half of the books in Ukrainian, but it's also about the discovery of Ukrainian literature in other parts of the world for those who want to do it. It's the opportunity to stimulate our translators. Not everybody knows that the story of success of the Nobel Prize is the story of investments in modern translators business. This year's winner, a Norwegian writer, got this prize because his books were translated to many languages, more than 50 languages of the world. There are no such authors in Ukraine, but what's going on, that they continue doing it only using their own effort, but it cannot last forever like this. So the discovery of Ukrainian books throughout the world is the initiation or continuation of that statement of Khvylovy that we should gravitate to Europe. Europe should know Malanyuk and Dontsov, Podmogilny, to understand the phenomena of being found with Ukrainian literature. They should be aware of Grigory Skovoroda. We remembered yesterday was the 301st anniversary of his birth. Ukrainian Socrates, as we call him. It's also about the National Reading Week, and it would be good if the opportunities to find out more about the literature were enough during the book forum, but I think the local initiatives should be active too, because it's also about the accessibility and availability in those regions that don't have such an opportunity to stay in capital locations, Kyiv locations, and the role of Ukrainian communities. I want to thank Rail Ukraine. They spent the last week on Mykolaiv region and in Vitovsk region, and Mykolaiv region and the city of Mykolaiv itself. Famous Ukrainian modern writers were meeting with the readers. They handed over hundreds of books to the local libraries, and it's important to maintain this Ukrainian front, specifically in those parts of Ukraine where it's the most necessary. These days, the ways to integrate our country in European communities, and as a commissioner for the protection of the state language, I want to say that all of our national communities are the citizens of Ukraine, no matter whether they are originally Romanians, Hungarians, Bulgarians. They are the citizens of Ukraine. They maintain the language front and they take active part in battle operations of the armed forces of Ukraine. They are the patriots who don't read less. They have very straight pro-Ukrainian position, and God protect all of our defenders, because their fight, their job, their work, their military work is about the Ukraine of the future. So let's trust that the National Reading Week will bring us new discoveries, new opportunities, the capability to rethink through those problems that we have, the discussion platforms that are so necessary today, because the literature discussion didn't end in the year 28. We know what it ended with when the national movements in Ukraine were oppressed by the totalitarian system. The enemy did not get anywhere. They continued gathering their forces, and nobody knows what they are capable of doing now. So hold the line and let's move forward. Thank you very much, Mr. Taras. Dear journalists, do you have any questions to our guests? Yana Lomoshenko, Ukrinform. My question is how the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy wants to reinforce the status of Ukrainian Book Institute. Are there any specific steps contemplated or taken? Do we have to amend a legislation in any way? Well, our task is not to reinforce the institute itself, but to reinforce the policy in terms, the government policy in terms of maintaining reading and businesses and all the adjacent areas. The policy is made of different actions that are supposed to be done by organizations that are involved in this process, no matter whether they are private or civil organizations or government institutions. In this case, we would like to arrange the system of the state focus and the state budget support of those projects that are implemented under the guidance of the government. Obviously, there are commercial companies, because it's a creative sector. They are supposed to be oriented at getting profit, getting revenue, because we discern the cultural service, the education service that is being, for example, provided by the government and subsidized by the government, and those projects implemented in the area of business and which are oriented to have their authors, their organizers, their founders, to get economic effect out of it. If we talk about the government component, we have to talk about the way that the government ensures this component implementation. They do it through the government budget, the analysis of expenses of budget in the area of publishing says that we have a number of institutions from the top level, the main disposers of the funds, the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy, the Ministry of Education and Science. By the way, the biggest publishing budgets, well, they have specifics. You say they're the textbooks, but the textbooks are books anyway. So, and the State Committee for Broadcasting of Ukraine. And if we talk about the specifics of the work of Minister of Culture and Information Policy as the authority that assists the book to be published as a textbook, that's a clearly identified function. And I think our colleagues understand how to properly formulate and implement the policy in this area. If we talk about the book that satisfies the social-cultural necessity of an individual, and this should be used in education process on the level of a family, or in case an adult person has a desire to self-improve, that's more of our competence. And I would like to say that the life of a person, their development is consisting of two sides where the government is touching them in one way or another. Education of values, creation of values that the government exercises through their institutions, through education processes like school or preschool institutions, universities, institutes, and so on and so forth. So the education goes on through the family, through the environment, but when a person has some need formulated, and the need is the consequence of those values that guide that person through their lives, that identify their priorities and vision, this is where those institutions come in that are usually referenced as cultural institutions like libraries, bookstores, and other organizations that we relate to the books. So if you're not educated with the values of reading, no one goes to the library. If the school, the family doesn't make it a habit. So here we have to be very specific and to understand our roles. So our role as the Minister of Culture and Information Policy to ensure the implementation of the concept and satisfaction of the social-cultural needs. We have to tell ourselves now that we should not only save and optimize, but we have to focus our resources in the most dense way and to prevent its wasting. And I see a leading organization there established by the initiative of the government is the Ukrainian Book Institute. All the programs should be focused in Ukrainian Book Institute as the only agency responsible for implementation of the policy, to make sure that the procurement of the books, the requests for preparation and publishing of some books, different literature contests, prizes, should be all overseen by this important institution, Ukrainian Book Institute. This is why we want some functions that are now the responsibility of ministry to be vested in the Ukrainian Book Institute, so they concentrate all the resources for more intense promotion of the tasks that they're facing. We are about to review now, and I'm appealing to my colleagues from the State Committee of Broadcasting to review their role in the support of books publishing and dissemination. I'm convinced that some areas, specifically when we talk about publishing of the books and other relevant businesses, should be handed over to Ukrainian Book Institute. Let's take another bigger layer of institutions which is consuming the budgets. They are the libraries. In my opinion, it's not quite correct that there is no direct link between our libraries network and the Ukrainian Book Institute. It's illogical that the process of the book coming to the consumers is interrupted. So we talk about the analysis of the market, publishing business, reading, but those institutions that provide this business, that help the citizens get the book and read it, get the book either in the library or in the bookstore. By the way, the Institute of the Book takes care of the bookstores, and the bookstores are socially oriented business that works in the best interests of Ukrainian nation and the government. So to wrap up the answer to your question, in my opinion today we have to be more attentive in terms of spending the government funds, in terms of taking the management decisions, and the concentration of functions in one institution would be a successful mechanism to ensure the implementation of many projects that we want to fulfill. And we have a lot of processes uncovered by the legislation, by the way, and we will start doing it as soon as we focus on this goal, when we don't waste our efforts. Do we have any more questions on the floor? Well, in case we do not, I want to thank our guests. We were talking about the Ukrainian National Reading Week. Ukraine Media Center Ukraine Forum will continue its operation tomorrow. Thank you for staying tuned.